Void Bastards is one of the hardest games for me to review in some time here on the channel. Not because it's a bad game, because it's so close to being one of my favorite titles this year, but a few design decisions just seem to clash with what I was expecting out of the game. But, to wit, the story of Void Bastards is that we are part of a prison colony of dehydrated prisoners aboard a prison vessel, which is now stranded in a dangerous nebula full of people who have been transformed into strange creatures, pirates, and the threat or the danger of bureaucracy is keeping us from, hopefully, getting out into freedom. The game itself is split between two distinct gameplay loops. You have the persistent layer of exploring the nebula, which is randomly generated based on these various derelicts, which you'll go into in first-person shooter/stealth-based gameplay to scavenge for resources and parts that you can then bring back to upgrade or unlock new tools to make life easier for you. As you explore the derelicts, you're going to run into all manner of enemies, and the enemies in Void Bastards fall into distinct categories. You have some who can have a frontal shield, others who can cloak or teleport around, and you have the nasty security elements on board each ship. You have a time limit in the form of oxygen that is always counting down, with some ships not having any way to refill them. But the ships themselves are not randomized. Each ship type has a hard-coded floor plan, and similar to something like Borderlands, the ships in terms of lore have belonged to a different federation or a different company, which determines their functionality, services, and what to find on them. But the game itself is all about trying to figure out how to make lemons out of lemonade. You will be strapped for resources both in terms of upgrade material, as well as the ammo that you need for your various tools. And the tools in Void Bastards fall into three categories. You have your normal weapons, you have sub-weapons that are usually good as a specific counter towards something, and then you have tools that can provide you with a special functionality on board each ship. You can only take one of each category on board a vessel, and you're never guaranteed to find ammo for them, unless you go to a specific ship that may be full of it, such as finding spikers on medical vessels. But the entire game is constantly about throwing things at the player and forcing them to react to it. If you go onto a ship that has no power, you're going to have to run and hit the power generator before you can do anything else. But doing that will also turn back on security. If a ship, for instance, has an element on it such as increased fire hazard, well, you're going to have to move around a lot more. Now, while the ships themselves are hard-coded, as you get further into the game, ships will come with a random assortment of pre-selected modifiers. This is similar to what we see in other roguelike games. And as other roguelike games, Void Bastards is not at all shy about throwing you under the bus. This is a game that is more than happy to put on very bad negative effects and, quite frankly, kill you. If you get stuck on a ship that is dark with no minimap and there's pirates on board, well, you're basically dead. There is no amount of good gameplay you're going to be able to do to get around that. And Void Bastards on paper and its core gameplay loop all work for me. I love this idea of scavenging the vessels, growing more powerful, and then using those tools and tricks to do more in the game. It was one of the things I really loved about Duskers. But similar to Duskers, Void Bastards tries to present both the micro and the macro layer of gameplay, and I don't think it works in this case. And in some aspects, it does feel less than the sum of its parts. But before we go into that, we're going to do a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters and sponsors. And now for a quick thank you to our Patreon supporters and current Game Wisdom sponsors. If you would like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, link down below. As I said at the start, Void Bastards, from a design standpoint, should be one of my favorite games this year. The combination of the micro roguelike elements and exploration, coupled with the persistent layer, has been the standout of design for many roguelikes I've played this decade. But the problem that I feel with Void Bastards is that at the moment, these two sides just don't feel like they're meshing as well as they should. So, the first point, from the persistent layer, the campaign structure of the game doesn't really afford you a lot in terms of depth. Each part of the campaign requires you to collect specific parts or get enough resources to build them. And there's nothing else you can really do along these lines. As you're seeing on the galaxy map here, you can only travel on specific lines. If an enemy ship moves on the line that you're trying to get to, you are in a lot of trouble. Likewise, your resources and what you're able to do are also going to be dependent on what ships you get. And as I said in the last part, this is a game that is built on RNG. And not RNG in the way of kind of giving you a chance. During the course of my run on hard difficulty, I ran into ships that were, well, impossible to win. And not impossible as in the get good variety. I mean impossible as in being on a power outage with pirates. The second you turn the power back on, all the security turned on. I got spotted by a turret or by a camera. The security bot comes and kills me instantly. And it's not a case of being able to outthink or outplay the game at that point. Now, the thing about Void Bastards is that so much of the depth or the tactics that you have available are built into your weapons or your gear, not so much into the general gameplay. When you look at something like Prey, for instance, each tool in that game served multiple purposes, and it left it up to you to kind of figure out how to make use of them. Good case in point being the Gloop Cannon being used for defense, offense, and transversal. In Void Bastards, each tool in the game is designed around a unique and specific function. What that means is that if you run into a situation when you need that tool and you don't have the resources to use it, you are in deep trouble. For instance, as you've been watching so far on this ship, I can use my stunner to knock out any kind of security elements or stun an enemy. But if I run out of ammo for that, that tool is now worthless to me. I can't use it. It's not like I can, let's say, pick up or shoot out a wire on the ground and create electricity that way. The ships themselves are very much hard-coded or locked in that regard, that you really can't do a lot to them. And again, this is such a shame because, as you can see, the game looks gorgeous. And I want to just give a shout out to the aesthetics. I love this comic book look. I love the detail of the enemies. And I love being yelled at in British slang as they try and kill me. But the problem is that it doesn't present enough variance, I feel, to keep the player invested. Now, there is an Ironman difficulty that I think would probably help out a lot. And again, keep in mind that what you're seeing here is me learning the game. I wouldn't consider this to be pro-level Void Bastards footage right now. But if you're hoping, or if you're looking at this and wanting a lot more in terms of the depth, I don't think it's there. Now, going back to the persistent layer for a second, because you are tied to the ships, it also makes things extra difficult, again, when you're trying to get upgrades. Because if the game is not spawning the ships that you need, there are going to be tools and functions that you will not be able to get access to. And that can have a huge effect on the difficulty. One of my favorite devices, the Scrambler, which I did not pick up until, or I didn't start using until like the very end of my playthrough allows you to switch alliances of the enemies so they'll help you. That would have been very helpful to get a little bit early on, but I didn't get that until pretty much the 11th hour and dying a whole lot. And as I said, it can be very frustrating to lose, not because of what you did, but because RNG got in the way of things. And with the game's design, I would have liked, again, more, functionality or utility at the basic mechanic layer. The use of the merits here to get special features or advantages on a ship is a great touch, but again, it kind of carries over, or is a good example of this issue I have with the design, that so much of your tools and abilities to get around are resource dependent. And again, that has a major impact on the difficulty, or on the RNG. If you get incredibly lucky, get tons and tons of merits, and you use that to make a lot of ships easier, well, that's going to give you more resources to make the game or continue that easiness. But when things go wrong, there's not much you can really do to correct that. Now, with that said, ultimately I enjoyed Void Bastards, but like I said, it's just missing, I think, that little extra something that would put it over the top for me. And I'm pretty glad that we did the interview with developers before this review went up, because they may not want to talk to me after they watch this video. But if I were to improve this game or, add more content, as I said in my written review, I think the key is going to be supplemental content. Especially from a game like XCOM 2, where you're adding in more things that creates added tactics and changes the playthrough around. Because I think that's ultimately what Void Bastards needs. There needs to be more things to make each run feel distinctive, and to give the player more tools to manage or more tools to use, and at the same time, also give them more things that can kind of mess them up, or again, throw them into chaos. Because that's ultimately what Void Bastards is about. You are having to manage, or you're trying to control chaos, which, as we all know, is not exactly the easiest thing to do. But with that said, we're going to end things here for this video. I would like to thank developers for giving me a press key to check this one out, as well as for having them come on to discuss the design of the game on several casts. I'll include links to those podcasts down below, but if you're working on your own game that you'd like me to take a look at, please don't hesitate to get in touch. But other than that, check back for daily discussions on game design here, and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, this has been Void Bastards. If you're looking for a book on design, my first title, 20 Essential Games to Study, is out now. It is available where most books are sold, and it comes in paper, hardcover, or digital copies. This is the perfect book for anyone interested in learning about game design, whether you are a student, enthusiast, or just a fan. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.